What are you serving here?
This is mead. It's the oldest fermented beverage.
Oldest being how old?
Records in Asia date back about 9,000 years.
All right, that's very old.
Would you like to try some?
Yeah, sure. I've never passed up a glass of mead in my life, this being the first. And its ingredients?
Honey, water, and yeast.
That's it?
That's it. And then you can add fruits and spices and herbs to them and make it different flavors.
So what is its history?
So Asia is the oldest records, but we know it from the Scandinavian and medieval cultures. The Vikings were known to drink mead, as well as the Knights of the Round Table.
Good for them, all right. And how did you get into it?
I went on a genealogy trip to Denmark, and I picked up a bottle of mead.
Because they're still drinking mead in Denmark.
That's correct. And passed that around at a dinner table. Everybody liked it. Being a home beer brewer, I decided I wanted to try and make mead.
So we've brewed beer before, then that's a few ingredients and a couple steps. This is just yeast and honey. How does this stack up?
It's much easier. Great place for a home brewer to start because it's just adding some ingredients together. There's no heating involved.
All right.
Would you like to see how it's made?
Sure, love to.
Excellent. Follow me. And welcome to our production area.
Wow, look at you. So what did you do? You just took over a two-car garage here?
That's correct. Perfect for a small-scale meadery.
All right. So a little bit more aggressive than the home brew operation, but not overly commercial either.
No, I have two 150-gallon tanks, and I have a few smaller tanks as well.
Okay.
We're about ready to make some mead in here today, so I have a 60-pound pail of honey here.
Wow, never seen so much honey in one place.
It's about 70,000 bees to make that. We're going to put 6 to 7 of these, 1/3 honey, 2/3 water, 400 pounds total. So now that we have our honey water mix, we're going to add a little bit more water to fill up the tank. I'm filtering the water through a carbon filter. We'll take out any of the chlorine. It's just town water. If it's good to drink town water, I think it's good enough to make mead. So we're going to finish letting this fill up with water. We're going to pitch some yeast and some nutrients in there and let it start fermenting.
Okay.
Over here I have a tank that we started several days ago. The yeast is consuming the sugar and the honey and converting it into CO2, alcohol, and heat.
So all those bubbles that are coming up right there, that is the yeast doing its job.
That's correct. So I know it's healthy when I see a lot of CO2 bubbles coming up.
Right.
So we're going to turn on this pump here and do a pump over.
Which is what?
We're pumping the must from the bottom of the tank to the top of the tank and releasing CO2 gas. And that will help to reduce stress on the yeast and make a better mead in the long run. And the other thing we want to do is we want to keep this unit cool. We want to keep the fermentation in the 60s.
Because this is heating up sort of just by the natural fermentation.
That's correct.
So how do you cool it down?
So we have this plate hanging down in here. That's a cooling plate. I have a chiller over here that's going to pump cold water up through the hoses and through the chiller plate. And the heat exchange will take place and will cool down and keep the fermentation around 68 degrees or so.
Okay. And so how long is this process going to take?
Fermentation is going to take up to 2 weeks. And the next process after that 2 weeks is racking. And racking is moving the must or the wine now into the aging tanks in the back. And that's where it's going to sit for up to 5-6 months and age, and mead will get better with time. So Kevin, you've seen what it takes to make commercial mead. Now we can do some home mead making.
So this is all we need to do it back at the house?
That's correct. We got a pretty simple setup. We have a gallon jug. We have a source of water, either tap water or spring water. You don't want to use distilled water. Honey, we need about 3 pounds of honey for 1 gallon. That will make a 15% alcohol mead or so. And the last key ingredient is the yeast, which I picked up at a local home brewing store. It's just a wine yeast. So you want to make sure everything's sanitized properly. I use sanitizer that I get at a homebrew store, but you can use chlorine bleach if you want, as long as you rinse everything really carefully after you sanitize. So we're going to put about 1/3 of a gallon in here, and then we will mix the honey in as well. That's about 1/3, that's good. Now we're going to add the honey. So we have, like I said, 3 pounds of honey, and you can either buy honey at a local big box store, or if you want to support your local apiary, look up a beekeeper in your area. I think it makes a little bit better mead. So you want to squeeze all the honey in here, and then we'll mix it up. So when we're done, what we're going to do is we're going to cap the gallon jug and mix this really well. We're going to shake it. So the honey needs to be dissolved into the water really well. And then this also is adding oxygen into the mixture, which at this point in the fermentation process is going to be important. So that's good. So the next step is to add some yeast. So I have my packet of yeast here. I'm going to add this to some hot water or warm water. It's 104 degrees. I'm following the instructions on the back of the package. So while the yeast is dissolving, we can add some nutrients to our mixture over here.
So this is not for flavor or anything, this is to help the yeast?
That's correct. Yeast really want nitrogen and other stuff to help reproduce and do the job of producing alcohol, and this will make a clean ferment. So you want to make a cleanest ferment as possible, because that will make a nice mead.
Okay. This is pretty close, I think.
Excellent. So now we're going to pitch the yeast.
That for you.
Now we got the yeast in there, and now we're going to top off the bottle with water. We don't want to fill it all the way. We want to leave a little bit of headspace, because once the fermentation starts, we want to leave a little bit of room for bubbles and CO2 to escape. So leave about 3 inches or so of airspace. Finally, our last step is to add an airlock on top of this. So an airlock is a device that lets CO2 escape and prevents oxygen from getting in. So we're going to seal this off, and then we're going to put a little bit of water in here, and then cover it up.
And the water is basically creating the plug?
That's correct. So what we have here now is mead that's been going for a couple days. You can know that it's still fermenting because you still see bubbles coming out of the airlock.
So that's the CO2 escaping right there?
That's correct. You want to keep monitoring this until it's done fermenting. This will slow down to nothing. And then the sedimentation here will start drifting down to the bottom of the gallon jug. And at that point, we're ready to rack, which is a term for moving the mead from one container to the next.
So I don't see any bubbles coming out here, and it looks like everything just sort of settled to the bottom?
That's correct. So what I have is a siphoning tube. You can pick this up at any home brewing store as well.
Okay.
We're going to siphon from here into a clean, sanitized new jug. You want to leave it off the bottom a bit because we don't want to stir up the sediment. This siphon tube has been filled with water. The gravity is going to pull the mead from above. You don't want to introduce any oxygen, so you want to make sure this siphoning tube on the lower jug is all the way in. And you're correct, you're about an inch or so from the bottom of the sediment in the old jug. Great. So we don't want to expose the mead to oxygen. So what we're going to do is going to add some sanitized marbles in here, and now it's going to fill up and take up the volume that we left behind in that last gallon jug. It's perfect. Now we're going to put the airlock back on. Probably want to leave this on for another month or so, and then you could replace it with the cap. Just in case any more fermentation is going, you don't want to pressurize the bottle. You're going to set this down in your basement for 9 months to a year.
Wow, that long, huh?
Yeah, the longer the better with mead. It will age and get better with time.
Well, I'm a patient man. I like a good mead, so we'll wait. But I appreciate
Excellent.
all the lessons.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
What are you serving here?
This is mead. It's the oldest fermented beverage.
Oldest being how old?
Records in Asia date back about 9,000 years.
All right, that's very old.
Would you like to try some?
Yeah, sure. I've never passed up a glass of mead in my life, this being the first. And its ingredients?
Honey, water, and yeast.
That's it?
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can add fruits and spices and herbs to them and make it different flavors.
So what is its history?
So Asia is the oldest records, but we know it from the Scandinavian and medieval cultures. The Vikings were known to drink mead, as well as the Knights of the Round Table.
Good for them, all right. And how did you get into it?
I went on a genealogy trip to Denmark, and I picked up a bottle of mead.
Because they're still drinking